Hey guys, so today I'm going to be reading Jin's lore. I'm really sorry if you can hear the fan in the background, but it's super hot today, and I would probably die if I didn't have the fan on. So I'm sorry if you can hear it in the background. I'm just trying to stay cool. It's probably like 90 degrees Fahrenheit, um, which is significantly hot for where I live. It's usually, in the summer, it usually stays around 75, 80. So, um, I'm just gonna go ahead and read Jin's lore. This one is a little weird because it only has the first chapter on this kind of setup, and then I have to go to the League bio page to read the rest of it. So they'll put a cut, and then it'll probably just stay on this section while I read the rest of it, just because the bio pages aren't that interesting. So, or I'll do like skins or something. This is Khada Jhin, the virtuoso. Art requires a certain cruelty. Jhin is a meticulous criminal psychopath who believes murder is art. Once an Ionian prisoner, but freed by the shadowy elements in the Ionian ruling council, the serial killer now works as their cabal's assassin. Using his gun as a paintbrush, Jhin creates works of artistic brutality, horrifying victims and onlookers. He gains a cruel pleasure from putting on his gruesome theater, making him the best choice to send the most powerful messages. Terror. For years, Ionian southern mountains were plagued by the infamous Golden Demon. Throughout the province of Zuna, monsters slaughtered scores of travelers and sometimes whole farmsteads, leaving behind twisted displays of corpses. Armed militias searched the forest towns, hired demon hunters, Wuju masters patrolled the roads, but nothing slowed this beast's grisly work. In desperation, the Council of Zun sent an envoy to beg the great master Kusho for help. Upon hearing the region's plight, Kusho feigned an excuse as to why he couldn't help. But a week later, the master, his son Shen, and star apprentice Zed disguised themselves as merchants and moved into the province. In secret, they visited countless families emotionally shattered by the killings, dissecting horrific crime scenes and searching for possible connections or patterns to the murders. Their investigation took 4 long years and left the 3 men changed. The famous red mane of Kusho turned white. Shen, known for his wit and humor, became somber, and Zed, the brightest star of Kusho's temple, began to struggle with his studies. Upon finding a pattern to the killing, the great master quoted it, saying, "Good and evil are not truths. They are born from men, and each sees the shades differently." Depicted in a variety of plays and epic poems, the capture of the Golden Demon would be the 7th and final great feat in the illustrious career of Lord Kusho. On the eve of the Blossom Festival in the Geom Pass, Kusho disguised himself as a renowned calligrapher and bent to blend in with the other great artists. Then he waited. Everyone had assumed that only an evil spirit could commit these horrifying crimes, but Kusho had realized the killer was an ordinary man. The famed Golden Demon was actually a mere stagehand in Zun's traveling theaters and opera houses working under the name Khada Jhin. They captured Jhin, and young Zed marched forward to kill the cowering man, but Kusho held him back. Despite the horrors of Jin's actions, the legendary master decided the killer would be taken alive and left at the Tula prison. Shen disagreed, but accepted the emotionless logic of his father's judgment. Zed, disturbed and haunted by the murder scenes he had witnessed, was unable to understand or accept this mercy, and it is said that a resentment began to bloom in his heart. Though imprisoned in Tula for many years, the polite and shy Khada Jhin revealed little of himself. Even his real name remained a mystery. But while a prisoner, the monks noted that he was a bright student who excelled in many subjects, including smithing, poetry, and dance. Regardless, the guards and the monks could find nothing to cure Jhin of his morbid fascinations. Once outside the prison, Ionia fell into turmoil as the Noxian Empire's invasion led to political instability. War broke out, and the tranquil nation's appetite for bloodshed increased. The peace and the balance Kusho had famously fought to protect was shattered from within as dark hearts rose to power and secret alliances competed for influence. Desperate to counter the power of the ninja and the Wuju swordsman, the Cable within a ruling council conspired to secretly free Jin and turn him into a weapon of terror. Now with the access to the Kashuri Armory's new weapons, the nearly unlimited funds, the scale of Khada Jin's performances had grown. His work had brought fear to many foreign dignitaries and the Ionian secret political underground. But how long will a serial killer craving attention be satisfied by working in the shadows? The gun in his hand was simply a tool, but a perfectly crafted one. Gold type was inlaid into the blackish-green metal. It spelled the smith's name. This detail spoke of its creator's pride and confidence, but it was not a Piltovian weapon. Those gaudy things had attempted to function with the minuscule amounts of magic available in those lands. This gun was made by a true forge master. Magic pulsed from its bronze Ionian heart. He wiped the gun's stock a fourth time. He couldn't be sure it was clean until he had wiped it down 4 times, but it didn't matter if he hadn't used it. It didn't matter that he was only going to stow it in his bag under his bed. He couldn't put it away until he was sure it was clean, and he couldn't be sure that it was clean until he had wiped it down 4 times. And it was getting clean, though. 4 times makes it clean. It was clean, and it was wonderful. His new patrons had been generous, but did the finest painters not deserve the finest brushes? The scale and the precision of the new device made his previous work with blades seem insignificant by comparison. Understanding firearm mechanics had taken him weeks of study, but evolving his G techniques from blades had taken months. The gun held 4 shots. Each bullet had been infused with magical energy. Each bullet was perfect in a Lasnian, as perfect as a Laslian monk's blade. Each bullet was the paint from which his art would flow. Each bullet was his masterpiece. It didn't just cut apart the body, it rearranged it. The rehearsal at the Milltown had already been shown the gun's potential, and his new employers had been pleased with the work's reception. He had finished polishing it, but with the gun in his right hand, the temptation was too great. He knew that he shouldn't, but he unpacked the black eel-skin bodysuit. He drew the fingertips of his left hand across the slick surface of the clothes. He felt the skin's oily surface quickening his breath. He picked up the tight leather mask and then, unable to help himself, slid it over his face. It covered his right eye and mouth. It constricted his breathing and removed his depth perception. Delightful. He was putting on the shoulder armor when the bells he had hidden on the steps leading up to the room sounded. He quickly folded up the weapon and removed the mask. "Hello?" said the maid through the door. The lilt in her voice hinted at an upbringing in the far south of his town. "You did what I asked?" he said. "Yes, sir. The white lantern every 4 yards. A red lantern every 16. "Then I can begin," Khada Jhin said as he swung open the door to his room. The woman's eyes widened as he exited the room. Jhin was well aware of how he looked. Normally, it had elicited pangs of self-consciousness and loathing, but today was performance day. Today, Khada Jhin cut a slender, elegant figure as he walked out with a cane. He was hunched and his clothes seemed to cover some huge deformity on his shoulder. But a gaunt stride belied this. He forcefully tapped the cane ahead of him and marched towards the window. He tapped the frame rhythmically, 3 beats and then a fourth. His gold sparkled, and his cream cloak flowed, and his jewels glittered in the sun. What was that? The maid asked, indicating Jin's shoulder. Jin paused for a moment to study the woman's cherubic face. It was round and perfectly symmetrical, a dull and predictable design. Removed, it would make a terrible mask. It's for the crescendo, my darling, Khada Jhin said. From the inn's window he had a clear view of the rest of the town and the valley below him. This performance had to be wonderful, but there was still so much work to do. The councilmen would be returning this evening, and so far all of Jin's plans for tonight seemed uninspired. I brought some flowers for your room, said the woman, walking past him. He could have used someone else to place the lanterns, but he didn't. He could have changed clothes before opening his door, but he didn't. And now she had seen Khada Jhin and his finery. The inspiration he needed was obvious now, so preordained. There was never a choice, and there was no escaping the art. He would have to make the maid's face more interesting. The candied pork glistened on top of the 5-flavor broth. The aroma entranced Shen, but he set aside his spoon. As the waitress left, she smiled and nodded in approval. The fat had yet to melt in the broth. Doubtless, the soup was already excellent, but in that moment the flavor would be at its peak. Patience. Shen considered the interior of the White Cliffs Inn. It was deceptively simple and rough. The wood weavers had been masters, removing the tree barks and leaving leaves only where necessary. The candle on Shen's table flickered wrongly. He slid away from the table, retrieving his blades from under his cloak. Your students are as quiet as a pregnant war axe, Shen said. Alone and dressed like a merchant, Zed entered the inn. Brushing past the waitress, he sat down 3 tables from Shen. Every part of him wanted to dash at his foe to avenge his father, but such was not the way of Twilight. He calmed himself as he realized the distance was too far, but only by the length of Shen's index finger. Shen looked at Zed, expecting to see him grin. Instead, his rival sighed. His skin was shallow, and the dark folds hung under his eyes. 5 years I have waited, Shen said. Have I misjudged the distance? Shen asked wearingly. Even if my head is cut off, I will still close and strike, Shen said, sliding his foot backwards and cocking it against the floor. Zed was 10 paces and 1/2 of a finger length away. Your path is closer to mine, and your father's ideals were his weakness. Ionia could no longer afford them, Zed said, leaning back in his chair, keeping himself just outside the range that Shen would need to strike a killing blow. I know that's something that I can make you understand, but I will offer you a chance for vengeance. I do not act because of vengeance. You defy balance. For that you are damned, Shen said as he inched forward to the edge of his chair. The golden demon escaped, Zed replied. Impossible, but Shen felt a hollowness, and it had caught in his chest. Your father's greatest victory, and now, again, his foolish mercy has tarnished his legacy. Zed shook his head. You know what that thing is capable of. Then Zed leaned over the table, well within Shen's range, his neck intentionally exposed. And you know that we are the only 2 people who can get close enough to stop him. Shen remembered the first time he had seen the body of someone killed by the infamous Khada Jhin. His skin prickled from the memory, his teeth clenched. Only his father had been strong enough to still believe that merciful justice could be served. Something in Shen had changed that day. Something in Zed had broken down, and now that monster had returned. Shen put his swords on the table and looked down at the perfect bowl of soup in front of him. Little droplets of pork fat's oil shimmered on the surface, but he wasn't hungry anymore. There was still no sign of Zed. It was disappointing, very disappointing, and he certainly must have sought out his former friend. It was likely Zed was hiding, watching. Jhin needed to be careful. From the jetty, Jhin looked back to the foreign ship. The tide had come in, and the ship would be leaving in a few moments. He would need to return if he was going to perform in Zon next month. Risk on top of risk. He stopped to check his reflection in a puddle. From the water, a worried elderly merchant stared back at him. Years of acting and practice combined his martial training that had given him total control of his facial muscles. It was a common face, and he had given it an unexceptional expression. When he walked up the hill, Jhin blended easily into the crowd. He checked the white lanterns above him, counting the distance. If Zed appeared, he would need them. At the inn on the top of the hill, he glanced at the planters where he had hidden traps. Sharpened steel blades shaped like flowers. They protected his escape route in case anything went wrong. He thought of how the metal would slice through the crowd and splash the building's freshly painted teal walls with red. It was tempting. He was pushing through the crowd when he heard the village elder speaking to Shen. "Why would a demon attack her and the councilman?" the elder asked. Shen, dressed in his blue outfit, did not answer. Another king cow, a woman named Akali, stood beside Shen. She walked to the doorway of the inn. "No," Shen said, blocking her path. "What makes you think I am not ready?" Akali asked, annoyed. "Because I wasn't when I was your age." At that moment, the town guard stumbled from the entrance, his face pale and hollow. "Her flesh, it was," he said. He took a few steps and then collapsed to the ground in shock. He saw it. He saw the flower. Far against the wall, the tavern owner laughed, and then he began weeping, his face painted by madness. These were not people who would forget seeing Khada Jin's work. Shen scanned the faces of the onlookers. Clever boy, Jhin thought, before fading into the back of the crowd. He checked the rooftops for Zed as he walked back to the ship. The work was inescapable. Together or apart, Zen and Shen would chase the clues he had left. They would follow them back to the Bloom fossil, back to the Jiang Pass, where they had become, and when they had become desperate, they would have to work together again. It would be like it had been when they were young. They would huddle together in awe and fear. Only then would the great Khada Jhin reveal himself, and his true masterpiece would begin. So that is the end of Khada Jin's story. So I hope that you guys enjoyed it. If you have any questions for me, you can leave them in the comments. You can like it if you enjoyed it. You can also subscribe. And I hope that everybody has a nice day, and if it is hot where you are, I hope that you're doing okay, because I am not very happy about it. So I hope that everybody has a nice day, and I'll talk to you guys later.